Today, we're going to be talking about what is guaranteed to be one of the biggest, or at least at the beginning, most popular decks to come out of Lost Origin. Hey everybody, Nick from 9Card TCG, and today we're going to be talking about a Hisuian Zoroark VStar deck, and I put this up to a vote on both Twitter and YouTube, and by a single vote, somehow Zoroark won. I really thought it was going to be Giratina, but we will be talking about Giratina VStar next, but today we're going to be focusing, of course, on Zoroark, and Zoroark is a really popular character, or Pokemon I should say, introduced in Unova, and then also we have Hisuian Zoroark, which is the one on the card introduced with Legends Arceus, and it was just a big hit the moment it was seen, so I'm expecting it to be pretty popular. This list is mostly inspired by Justin Basil's list. We played this on a webcam battle, which you will see tomorrow, spoilers, and also his website, which is a really good website, so links to that in the video description. I did make one single change, and we'll talk about some other ways that this deck can be changed, but if you haven't already, do me a favor, hit the subscribe button, leave a like, and a comment. Those things tell YouTube this is a good channel, and other people should watch it. And let's just get straight to Pokegear, and we can talk about the Zoroark deck. Hisuian Zoroark V is, it's okay. We don't really care too much about the V. Hollow Swap is kind of nice for just a free attack. Hit for 30 and you can switch this Pokemon with one of your bench Pokemon. It's really nice if you start this and you don't necessarily want to. You can, maybe you're going second, you start this thing and you're like, oh man, it's going to get knocked out really easily or whatever. You hit Hollow Swap for free, 30 damage, you go back to the bench, you send up like a Bidoof or something. Shadow Cyclone for 3 colorless energies, 130 damage, movement energy from this Pokemon to one of your benched. Again, it's fine. We really aren't going to be hitting with the V ever. We are weak to fighting. We do have a retreat cost of 210 health, so most of that is pretty standard. Me personally, love the weakness to fighting. And then we have Hisuian Zoroark VStar that doesn't want to show up, so that's kind of unfortunate. 270 health, still weak to fighting, and a 2 retreat cost. Baleful or Baneful Curse. It does for 2 colorless energies, 50 damage times the number of Pokemon you have in play with any damage counters on them. So you could have up to 6 Pokemon in play, which means you could theoretically be hitting for 300 damage, 280 if you have a choice belt, but 280 is kind of the mark at the moment. Both Arceus and Palkia V-Stars have 280 health. Technically Dialga does, but not as common. So we are running a 4-3 line of the Zoroarks. Now, Phantom Star, once during your turn, you may discard your hand and draw 7 cards. That's your V-Star power. It's Professor's Research. So, you do have a few rule box Pokemon in this deck, so Path to the Peak can be a little annoying, especially if you really need a Phantom Star, but can't. So that's something to keep in mind. Crobat and Lumineon are going to help us draw cards, find supporters. Radiant Greninja, also affected by Path to the Peak. It is a rule box Pokemon. Discard an energy card from your hand to draw 2 using concealed cards. Bibarel, Industrious Incisors, you can just draw until you have 5 cards in your hand. Very, very good ability, because we're going to talk about how this deck works and how we're going to set up big damage on Zoroark in a moment. And then our newest, well, I guess one of our newest Pokemon is Gengar with the Creeping Back ability. As once during your turn, if this card is in your discard pile, you may put it onto your bench. If you do, this Pokemon takes 3 damage counters. Now, this is actually a good ability for something like Zoroark, because we can just discard it freely with Quick Ball, Ultra Ball, Research, Phantom Star, whatever. We get this thing into the discard pile. Now we can just bring it right back onto the bench, put some damage counters on it, and now Baneful Curse is going to be hitting even harder thanks to Gengar. So we do run a few copies of those. Now, could you decrease this to 2 copies? Yeah, probably, but you really want to try to find these things. This way you can guarantee that they make it onto the field and you can start putting some damage on them. But having 3 damage counters on a single Gengar doesn't do a lot for Baneful Curse. I keep wanting to say Baleful Curse for some reason, not really sure why, but if I do, I apologize. Baneful Curse needs a lot of Pokemon with damage counters, so we have a brand new item, Damage Pump. Damage Pump lets you move up to 2 damage counters from one of your Pokemon to your Pokemon in any way you like. So Gengar comes onto the field, 3 damage counters. Well, if after Gengar comes into play, or even before, it doesn't really matter. If you have other Pokemon in play, you could just use Damage Pump to take 2 of the damage counters off Gengar and move them 1 and 1 to other Pokemon, which is really, really nice. It's gonna not only make the Gengar a little bit harder to KO, even though it doesn't really matter that much, it does let you spread out that damage counter. So that's really nice. It's a very nice combo that you can do. Another way we're going to get damage counters is Gate Draw Bog. It's our stadium of choice. When either player puts a basic Pokemon from their hand onto the bench, it takes 2 damage counters. Now this works in 2 ways for us. One, it's going to soften up our opponent's Pokemon, so when they come into play, they're a little bit easier for us to KO, so maybe we don't need as many damage counters, but also it's going to spread out damage counters onto our Pokemon as well, so Baneful Curse hits for the biggest damage it can. The rest of the deck is, that's kind of the combo there, is get Gate Draw Bog, throw down a bunch of basic Pokemon, put a bunch of damage counters on them, use Damage Pump or Gengar to spread out the damage so that as many Pokemon as possible have the fewest number of damage counters. Like, you don't want 10 damage counters on your Bibarel. You don't want that. You want to be able to spread out that damage with something like Damage Pump. Interestingly enough, Damage Pump could be the difference between a Pokemon getting knocked out or not. So that's something to keep in mind. Maybe your opponent is trying to set up a Crobat or a Lumineon for a Rapid Flow turn. Well, if you start moving damage off of it, maybe they need an extra piece. Maybe they need the Telescopic Sight and the Passimian, something like that. Maybe they won't be able to Yoga Loop something the following turn. Maybe they're looking to Yoga Loop your Crobat. You move 2 damage counters off it, now might be a little bit harder. Granted, they can quick shooting, but you get the idea. There may be a scenario where pulling damage counters off is kind of useful, but mostly we're using it actually to put on to other Pokemon. The rest of the deck is exceedingly simple. Quick Balls to find basic Pokemon, Evolution Incense to find our evolution Pokemon. Now we can use Evolution Incense to find Hisuian Zoroark, but we can also use it to find Gengar, which is kind of nice because we can use Ultra Ball Evolution Incense to find the Gengar just to discard it so we can get the ability that same turn. Capacious Bucket's going to find us some water energies. Choice Belt lets us hit a little bit harder. It lets us hit into VMAX territory, which is really, really cool. And it also lets us one-shot an Arceus V-Star, even if they have a big charm, and we have a DTE, because we'll be hitting for 330 max, minus 20 from the DTE is 310, which is what Arceus has with a Choice Belt. Melanie's going to accelerate some energy so that we can set up additional Zoroarks. We really don't have a second attacker in this deck, so maybe something like a Starmie might not be the worst thing in the world, just so you can have a secondary attacker. Maybe a Raihan instead of a third Melanie is something you can consider. You're putting damage counters on Pokemon, it's likely that they're going to get, boss KO'd. This list does not have a Dunsparce, as you can tell. So, if it turns out that fighting starts to make a comeback because Arceus and Teleon, they're starting to remove Manaphy Dunsparce. Zoroark is going to come into play, no Dunsparce. What are some other decks that are weak to fighting? Random electric types to try to counter Palkia, usually weak to fighting. So, keep that in mind. Dunsparce may or may not be useful depending on the meta that you encounter. Research is our draw support. We have a lot of Boss's Orders, and part of the reason is A, we don't have a Pal Pad, and B, we might discard them when we don't have a Pal Pad. So we need multiple of them, and also it's super easy to just target down a V, especially if we're going first and we get a bunch of damage. We don't need that many damage counters on our Pokemon for Baleful Curse to hit for 200 damage. Choice Belt, we're hitting 230. We're knocking out every V in the game that's in play at the moment. So you just need 4. 4 and a Choice Belt, 5 and no Choice Belt. You're hitting 250. That's plenty. So, the Choice Belt is useful there just to make it so you typically need 1 less Pokemon. Again, we can have 5 Pokemon in play and a Choice Belt, knock out Arceus V-Star, knock out Palkia V-Star. One of the issues with this deck is that you are forced to bench really wide, which means Palkia could be a problem. They're going to be hitting you really hard as well, so that's kind of who gets set up first. And the fact that you are putting damage counters on all of your Pokemon means it's a little bit easier for them to take knockouts. Maybe they don't have to have the choice belt. Maybe they don't have to quick shooting. Things like that. It's going to be maybe a little easier for Greninja plays to happen. Maybe if there's too many damage counters on your Beebrels or something like that, they can take out a Beebrel. They can really soften up a Zoroark for easy knockout next turn, Hydro Break, knockout, something like that. Maybe they don't even need a V-Star. There's a lot of things that Palkia can do to a deck like this that is forced to bench wide. The Crobats, Luminions, super easy targets for Boss and Cross Switcher. They might not even have to really go through a Zoroark V-Star, so something to keep in mind when deciding if you want to play this deck. And again, you have to have all of your Pokemon with damage and a choice belt in order to really be knocking out Arceus V-Star if they have Big Charm, and they will, assuming you have a double turbo energy. So, you still need a lot of stuff to happen in order to take knockouts on big Pokemon. If you don't knock out an Arceus V-Star, they're just going to Sharon's Care. So maybe you take the same route Palkia tries to do and chase down a V before they can get the Sharon's Loop going. It's just something to consider. Can you knock out something like Goodra? Goodra might be a kind of a challenge. They are going to reduce all this damage, and you're going to be putting damage counters on your Pokemon. They're going to be hitting you for 200 damage. They're going to be healing. I don't think this is going to be like the next big tier 1 deck. I think it's going to be good. I think it's going to be fun. I think you might find at times it's a little frustrating because it's a seemingly simple concept. Get bench Pokemon, put damage counters on them, Gengar damage pump, Gape Draw Bog, whatever that combo is, and then just attack with Zoroark. Like, it really is pretty simple. You can refill your hand with Beebrel, Luminion, Crobat, things like that. It's a very simple deck, and yet somehow I feel like it's not going to be able to compete with the top decks. An alternate way that you could build this deck, although I don't think it really makes a huge difference, is you could maybe go Gardenias and Grass Energies and try to accelerate Gardenia. This way you don't have to worry about Melanie and Attach. You just kind of Gardenia onto a bench and you're ready to go. I don't know, something. Maybe you can get a Zarude V in there at that point, start hitting 240, 270 with Choice Belt. Maybe if you don't have a Zoroark set up, you can use something like the Zarude. And now it doesn't really matter if you're a Pokemon with damage counters or not. Zarude just hits native. I think like 220 or 240 to Pokemon V. Slap a Choice Belt on there. You could be hitting pretty hard. So, something to consider. I don't think this is going to be like the next biggest thing. If I remember correctly, don't think it's really seeing a ton of play in Japan at the moment. And yes, I know Japan and the US and Europe and everyone have slightly different metas, but in general, if it's not doing very well in Japan, or if it's not really seeing a lot of play in Japan, it probably won't see too much play here outside of maybe like the first month or so, right? Just like Regigigas saw a lot of play the first 2 months of Astral Radiance. Lunatone Solrock saw a lot of play the first month, 2 months of Pokemon Go. Rayquaza saw a lot of play at the beginning of Evolving Skies, whatever. So like when new cards come out, people want to play with them, especially when they're really popular Pokemon like Rayquaza, like Hisuian and Zoroark. People want to play with them, so don't be surprised if you see it. The best thing you can do is to throw that on Path to the Peak, honestly, and then you're going to force them to have Gape Draw Bog. They have no real search, they have no Raihan, no Inteleon engine to find Gape Draw, so if they don't have it, you can really make them stuck, especially if it's like early game. They can't get damage onto the Pokemon a little easier. You might force them to research away a bunch of stuff they don't want to. Path can really hurt this deck. Run a Galarian Zapdos and just obliterate your opponent's field. They're likely going to have a Zoroark or two, a Crobat, a Luminion, so you can very easily, just like attach and then maybe Melanie onto your Zapdos to get the 2 energies you need, and there you go. You're set for game. So yeah, that's Hisuian Zoroark. That's going to do it for us today. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, found this a little informative. Again, check out justinbasil.com. Subscribe and leave a like and a comment on this video. What do you think of Hisuian Zoroark? Do you think it's going to be really good? What changes would you make to this list? And I want to know, so tell me in the comments below. And that's going to do it for us today. Thanks so much, and I will see you next time.